Hello there. This is a short video about a very serious problem which doesn't get talked about that much in this country. Every now and then it has been, but it's a very major problem, and I've been on the radio a couple of times talking about this. I think with one of our national broadcasters. The problem obviously is, you know already from the title, addiction. And Ireland is a problem sort of on a scale that's dwarfed by America, you know, the fentanyl and all that kind of thing. But it is nonetheless a very, very serious problem for a country that's got in total, including the north, about 7 million people nearly, something like that. So it's tiny, it's a tiny number of people, but there is a big problem here. I did work for a couple of years at an addiction centre, not as a counsellor, but anyway, I did see an awful lot of what was going on, and I had daily contact and instruction with the residents. The big problem is that there just isn't enough facilities, and there seems to be a sort of denial about the whole thing. Certainly there's a long history of alcohol addiction in Ireland, just there has been throughout parts of Northern Europe. It's particularly bad in Scotland as well, also places like sort of parts of Scandinavia, Poland, etc. They have heavy drinkers as well. But there's still, I mean, the amount of drinking has apparently gone down here, but it's still very high. There's a lot of people that smoke, although that's dropped somewhat. But as these things have dropped, you've got a massive increase in other problems. Drugs is a massive, massive problem. Only, I think it was just over a week ago, a young woman died. She'd had a heroin overdose the week before she died, and she died of a heart attack. I mean, for a small place where I live, it's quite shocking. There seems to be all kinds of drugs here. You can get anything you want. Again, in a very small sort of touristy place that has this sort of perception of being sort of very quaint and beautiful and a lovely spot. You don't expect it to be full of drugs, but it is. Unfortunately, it is full of drugs. And then, of course, there's other problems like gambling. There's at least one betting shop in pretty much every small town and even some villages in Ireland. And there's huge numbers of people who are addicted to gambling. Whatever money they have, they're going to fritter it away on that. And people end up in serious trouble. They end up losing their homes, losing their jobs, living on the street, etc., as a result of their horrific gambling addiction. And this is somewhat played down compared to, say, being a heroin addict. But it is very, very serious nonetheless, and it affects a huge number of people. Another serious problem now is porn, addiction to porn, where people as young as 10 even getting access to pornography, and especially young boys sort of who, you know, in their teenage years are, you know, they can download stuff on their phone and just, you know, watch all kinds of extreme stuff, you know, 12, 13, 14 years old. I mean, how inappropriate is that? It really is appalling. There's no real restrictions. The government seem to have their head in the sand. They don't want to deal with this issue because they have no ideas about how to solve these problems. And it really is kind of sad that the issue's just swept under the carpet and ignored. But these problems are only going to get worse if they're not dealt with. And certainly with the drug issue, you've now got seemingly fentanyl starting to come into the country, which has horrific effects. We're getting things laced with fentanyl, which can cause deaths. Probably, it's quite likely that some of the deaths in the last year are as a result of other drugs being laced with fentanyl, which is extremely cheap and very dangerous, I might add. So I think Ireland's one of those countries where you just think, well, if I ignore it, maybe it'll just go away. Very serious mistakes are made in government, and they just ignore things, like the housing crisis. Most of the time, they just ignore the fact that it's there. They don't really have a coherent plan to deal with it, with all the homelessness. And they just hope that if you say nothing and just sort of keep your head down, it'll just disappear. Well, I mean, life isn't like that on an individual level. And on a collective level, things usually don't just go away. Sometimes they do. Sometimes problems sort of fix themselves. But most of the time, that's not the case. And certainly with something as seriousness of serious addictions, we're just creating a situation where future generations will be absolutely ruined between addiction to drugs, gambling, pornography. A lot of teenagers could find themselves in serious mental health problems and poverty, perhaps as well, homelessness, if their problems are not dealt with. So it's like a bit of a time bomb. It really is. And the government's approach to this is to sort of try not to talk about it, and then sort of try and solve the problem a little bit, just a small little bit of something, bit of ointment on it, and maybe everyone will shut up and leave us alone. But that's not good enough. That's not going to fix things. And there need to be some very difficult, serious conversations about how these problems are actually dealt with. Otherwise, it's just going to explode in the future. It probably won't be very many years from now that this will become a very, very serious problem that will break apart the fabric of society if it's not dealt with. So I'd like to see more people talking about this subject. It is a thorny issue. It's a difficult thing to talk about, but doing nothing is not the answer. Doing nothing is just going to mean that there's going to be a disaster down the road. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now, and feel free to subscribe and to like if you thought it was a good video, and if you have any comments on what I said, please feel free to leave a comment. I'm very interested to hear what people think about this subject. Okie dokie, that's it for now. Bye bye.